Hi class, this is Mr. Tan and we are looking today at the merit criteria M1, M2, M3 and M4. M1 says analyse how the structure, size and scope of different organisations linked to the business objectives and products and services offered by that organisation. So obviously the first thing we need to do is to break the question down, and the key word here is analyse. Analyse means look at the interrelationship between two or more variables and how one variable affects another. And then we're talking about the structure, the size and the scope of different organisations. So if we recall, different organisations include sole traders, partnerships, private limited companies, public limited companies, charities, thank you very much, public organisations like the police, like the schools, like the healthcare. So these are different types of organisations. And so analyse how maybe if you take a sole trader, and let's take Toyota. So the size, structure and scope of a sole trader is very limited. The structure of a sole trader is literally the one-man band himself. It's the owner of the newsagents. The size, he's limited. He's limited to that geographic area that he can actually supply his goods to within a given area, to a local population. And again, the scope is really to try and achieve his aims and objectives in terms of meeting his minimum requirements to survive. So in terms of what he can offer in terms of the product and services and the things he can do in the company is very limited. It'd be very difficult for him to open up another shop and try and run it unless he actually got someone to run it for him. He could possibly open 2 or 3 shops, but again, that's probably the maximum he would need. He could possibly open and manage those other shops where people were working for him. So we can see that with a sole trader, the sole trader is going to be very limited in terms of what he can offer and how he can offer it, because he's a one-man person coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning and not leaving until 11 o'clock at night, doing everything himself. So there's only so much time in a day and there's only so much one person can do. So it's going to be very restrictive. In direct comparison to Toyota, well, Toyota is classified as a large organisation, many thousands of employees, and it's a public limited company, and Toyota is a global company in over 27 countries, turning over billions of US dollars. So we can see that their purpose and scope is going to be a lot bigger. Their purpose and scope is to meet their sales objectives year on year, to satisfy their shareholders' needs and their stakeholders' needs as well. Now they are positioned geographically in a hierarchy type structure, where the power used to be more centralized in Japan, but recently has been decentralized to each geographical area. So we can see that each area is trying to maximize their sales, to hit their targets, to plow back into the head office. Again, their size is global, their structure is global, they have huge developments into research and development, into marketing, into sales, into distribution networks. So they can pretty much do and go wherever they feel that they need to go, because they've got the resources, they've got the manpower and the skills to do this. So in direct comparison, the size and structure and the scope will have a big influence in terms of all the products and services they can offer. Obviously to a one-man band, very limited, to someone like Toyota, to a degree, unlimited. Okay, to a degree. Okay, so that's M1 looked at. Now M2 says, analyse the advantages and disadvantages of interrelationships between organisation functions and the impact they have upon organisational structure. So if we look at Toyota and the interrelationship between the different functions, well, it is absolutely crucial that their functions like the sales department, the marketing department, finance department, accounts department, R&D department, customer service department, HR department, and many other departments. It's absolutely crucial that those departments work together, because if those departments don't work together, then mistakes are going to happen. And as we've seen in Toyota, one bigger disadvantage if departments not working together is where you had the recall of all their products in terms of one model of car where the brake was sticking, causing a few deaths and loads of accidents. Their products were recalled because the different functions hadn't worked together effectively, or as effectively as they should have worked together. And that has caused loads of problems, caused them to lose time, caused them to lose the recall of all their products, it caused them to lose reputation, and everything else, and the money as well that they lost in all of that. It almost made them go bankrupt, purely because different departments were not working together to make sure that these accidents didn't happen. Where was the quality control in terms of all of this? And how was it allowed to happen? Who was supposed to test it? And how long was it tested over? Again, the different departments, I would suggest, hadn't really worked together in order to make sure that this hadn't happened, which almost brought down the whole company, purely because different departments weren't working together. Because there are quality checks in order to ensure that this thing doesn't happen. So again, disadvantages of not working together in that if you don't work together, then you're going to double up your work. You're going to create more bureaucracy, and you're going to waste time. You're going to waste time because if you're not working together, you're not minimizing the time. And so you have to wait for one department to come on board and do what you need them to do before you can achieve what you need to achieve. And that's a waste of time. And it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of money. And ultimately, if you've got a waste of all these things, and a huge disadvantage if functions not working together is that in terms of your competitors, if your competitors are working together in terms of their functions and you're not working together, you're wasting money or hemorrhaging money and they're not, then they're eventually going to have more money to invest in customer needs. They're going to have more money to invest in research and development. They're going to have more money to invest in marketing. They're going to have more money to invest in positioning strategies. So if they have more money, eventually, if they're working together efficiently and effectively and you're not, eventually they will take over you and they will take over your sales. And that being the case, you will eventually wither away and die if these interconnecting departments are not working together. The advantages are that if they are working together, then they are going to be efficient and effective. They're going to save time. They're going to save you money. And in terms of Porter's 5-force model and the competitive rivalry, it's going to make them very competitive. And if you can put one of your competitors out of business because you're more competitive than they are, then you're going to take away their sales. So it's going to mean even more sales for you because you're even more competitive. Does that make sense? Yes? Yeah. Okay. So here we can see, and then it says, the other part of the question says, and functions, and the impact that they can have on organisation structure. Well, what has been the impact on the organisational structure of Toyota? Well, Toyota has grown from a car manufacturer based in Japan to a global car manufacturer in over 27 countries. And as we said before, they are split geographically in a hierarchical system. And before, the power used to be based in all their head office in Japan, which meant it took a lot of time for decisions to be made, in which case your competitors or small organizations can actually go in before you and do what you were going to do. But the impact that this has had on Japan has that Japan has now decentralized their power. They've decentralized their power such that the geographical areas in each location now has the power at the top to make decisions themselves, and this means that they're actually faster in taking these decisions. Look forward, you two. Look this way. Look this way. Okay. So it has a huge impact in terms of how big the structure is, in terms of centralization of power, and what you need to do is make sure that your company grows and decentralizes the power. Otherwise, you become very slow, and by being slow you waste a lot of time and effort and doubling up the resources. So you have to be quick. So that's looking at M2. These are just examples and guidelines in terms of looking at how you can possibly answer these. So M1 you would answer after P2, and M2 you would answer after P3. Now M3 says apply appropriately Pestel, the Pestel model, to support a detailed analysis of the macro environment within an organization. Well, the organisation we're looking at, obviously, is Toyota. And the macro environment, what we looked at before, we were looking at was Porter's 5-force model. Porter's 5-force model in terms of customers, suppliers, new entrants, substitutes, and in the middle of Porter's 5-force model, how competitive it was in the middle. We know that in the car industry, it is extremely competitive. It is highly competitive. We know that the manufacturers of car manufacturers have more power over the suppliers. We know that the customers have more power over the manufacturers. And we know it's very difficult for people to come into the marketplace because of the huge investment needed to make it a success. And we know that substitutes are there, but maybe it's not greatly affecting people. Substitutes like bicycles, it still is not going to be a huge substitute for the motor car today. People have their cyclists, and they also have their motor cars as well. They have both. So what you need to do with this one is to take certain examples from Pastel and say how it affects the competitive rivalry or the Porter's 5-force model. So example, in terms of the environmental factors, we know the world is becoming more environmentally friendly and more environmentally conscious in terms of the fuels we're using, in terms of the emissions we're making, such that more consumers are demanding electric cars. More consumers now are demanding new technology in terms of the technological factors. Technology in terms of the possibilities of driverless cars, which we see, which are developing now with Google cars and other car manufacturers with the driverless cars, and even the possibility of flying cars in the future. So we can see that this will give guidance to companies in terms of perhaps future new products. If you want to be competitive in your competitive rivalry in the middle of the Porter's 5-force model, then obviously these new developments, these new shifts in terms of what consumers need or consumers want, will then focus the competitive rivalry in terms of these new product areas, meeting the needs of the end consumer. And even if we look at political factors as another example, we can see in Japan, the Japanese government gave huge subsidies to their consumers who were buying cars with hydrocarbon fuels. Subsequently, Toyota developed with their research and development and launched a car with hydrocarbon fuels, and they turned and taken billions of dollars with this car because they're selling this car which has been subsidized by the Japanese government. And it also leaves them in a good position because in terms of other countries now, they can sell these cars, an existing product in their home market, into new markets. And they will already have the advantage over all their competitors. Again, linking it to Porter's 5-force model, it makes you even more competitive in this competitive rivalry. Okay? Now, M4. Looking at M4, it says apply appropriately SWOT. SWOT being strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Analysis and justify how they influence decision making. Well, let's look at some of the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Some of the strengths of Toyota has been their branding, has been their distribution networks, has been their the perception of consumers in terms of Toyota, in terms of the reliability, the quality, the cost effectiveness, the competitiveness of Toyota cars, and they've got a good reputation in the marketplace. The weaknesses of Toyota are that they had the big recall of their product line, which had caused a few deaths, and so that had cost Toyota a lot of money. Also, they had hit their reputation as well. And that was one of the things that could have actually brought Toyota down, because they lost billions and billions on that one thing alone. Another weakness in terms of Toyota is not getting good value for money in terms of the allocation of resources. Other companies seem to be getting a better return on the amount of money that they're putting into their businesses. Opportunities, well, opportunities lie with new technology and new cars. And that's a good thing for Toyota, because Toyota are very strong in terms of the research and development. So if they're strong in their research and development, then they can capitalize on new product developments in terms of new cars, electric cars, hydrocarbon cars, and driverless cars, and maybe flying cars in the future. But to target all these type things, that they have the infrastructure